¿Qué pasó, YouTube? So, ARCHMAN here. First video in about 6 months, I reckon. You can see I'm in a little cabin down in the Terlingua ghost town, so it's not necessarily easy for me to make a video. No water, no electricity, all these things. Hardest part actually is taking the time to upload one, just kind of a pain in the ass. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the Nyala, just because I've been carrying it for about a little under 6 months, and it has outshined the other knives that I've come across in that time, and just kind of opted out of posting videos about. So some of those would be the Chris Reeve knives, Zon, the Gold Class Griptilian, Burger Excalibur, Rat RC3, a few other knives like that I've just kind of opted out of reviewing just because of lack of enthusiasm, basically. But the Zon has proven itself to me to be a pretty good design, a pretty spectacular knife, all things considered. Start off with I just used it to make some lunch with, cut some potatoes up, so I got some potatoes in there. So start off with my dislikes. Alright, my first dislike about the knife is basically that it's a fixed blade, and a fixed blade knife will not take the place of a folding knife for me. It might come with me in addition to a folding knife on occasion, but so having it is a good thing, but I don't necessarily use it a lot. And basically the main reason is because you take it out of the sheath and then you use it for whatever it is that you need it for, and then to get it back in the sheath, it requires a lot more concentration and care to put it away than a folding knife does. You have to actually look at the sheath, don't stab yourself in the ass and all that stuff, I find. Whereas a folding knife, you pull it out of your pocket, you use it for whatever you need to use it for, and then you can blindly and safely put it away. So I really like that. I'm not a huge fan of the thick stock on this knife, it's kind of a love-hate thing, I guess. I can see it as a jack-of-all-trades knife. You can probably be really rough with this knife if needed. But I don't know, for all purposes, everyday carry uses, I feel like the thick stock just gets in the way, of it just being the little cutting machine that it could be. So, looking at this Nyala side by side with the Sebenza, you can see it. The stock dwarfs the Sebenza, even though the Sebenza is fairly thick, stock. In this day and age, when we have this fad of big fat, blades, I don't know. I feel like the Sebenza's stock thickness is as thick as you need, as robust as you need. But like I said, this could be seen as more of a jack of all trades and less as just a great everyday carry knife. It could be considered something that's gonna, I guess, just be, you can abuse it, which is inherent with a fixed blade knife anyhow. But yeah, I'm not sure that I'm too supportive of how thick the stock is. Saving grace, obviously, is that the Reeve shop, at least on this one, did put a fairly thin grind on it. For my tastes and uses, it's just right on the edge of the thickest levels, thickest acceptable grind on it. And I'm talking about where the grind meets the edge, that shoulder there. That's kind of where I'm looking when I'm talking about thin or thick grind, for the most part. And yeah, it's acceptable. It is acceptable. My favorite thing about this knife, honestly, is the large handle. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, though. I was going with dislikes. So, where was I? Oh, dislikes. I don't like the round handle. one of the reasons I couldn't ever feel attached to the Chris Reeve one-piece knives, you know, and I probably had 5 different Chris Reeve one-piece knives, and yeah, I mean, the only one that I really used a bunch was the Shadow 3, and I just didn't like the top guard on that. That was the end of that knife for me. But yeah, the round handle, you know, it's just not that comfortable for me. I feel like the side of the knife hits me right in this area, right across the calluses there, and I just feel like a flatter knife is more comfortable, you know. I don't know, your mileage may vary. You might like a rounder handle, but I just don't. I don't like the shrunken handle either. It's like all kinds of gunk and just shit gets trapped in there, in that kind of corner there where where the handle slabs meet the actual blade tang. I don't know what the deal is with that. Why anyone would make a knife like that. I don't like it at all, you know. And I think it probably would be more comfortable if it was a little wider, you know. I don't know. But the flat scales, that's really the only really kind of peeve that I have with this knife. New out of the box, the fluting on this knife, you can see all these carvings right in here, are a little on the sharp side. It was fairly uncomfortable at first. I mean, it took all my patience to not just take a piece of sandpaper to it and knock the corners off the peaks of all these edges, but it's smoothened out a little bit with time, you know, no big deal. So that's really it for my dislikes. Like I said, my favorite thing about this knife is simple, and that is that it has a large handle, you know. Just to kind of scoot back a little bit, hold it up to the Sebenza. This knife really is kind of like the fixed blade Sebenza that people have been asking for years and years and years, finally delivered. So that's pretty great. It's very similar to the Sebenza. And the large Sebenza, I think, really kind of has an ideal handle size for me, you know. Just to give you another look at something, here is a military, alright, alongside. The military is obviously a lot larger of a knife than, well, I guess not a lot, but fairly significantly larger than this Nyala. So it is small. That's another thing that I really like about it. I love the size of this knife. It's perfect, ideal for what you might consider an everyday carry fixed blade knife. The blade steel, I don't know. It's personal preference. Some people just don't care for stainless, and for whatever reason, some people might not even care for S30V. And this is obviously is S35VN, but it's so similar to S30V that I can't tell much of a difference. I guess in theory it's slightly easier to sharpen and slightly more corrosion resistant, which is pretty rad. Hey, I'll take both those. Having had and used this knife for about 5 or 6 months, I would say I've sharpened it 5, 6, 7 times, something around there. And that's just because I prefer it to be sharp rather than just deal with a working edge, you know, what you might call a working edge. So like, say my Spyderco Military or my Sebenza with S30V, I'm comfortable with it having a working edge and letting it go a little bit. So I haven't really let this one go. But sharpening it, touching it up doesn't seem to be a problem at all. Really, really a big fan of the steel, and that's probably one of the things that I feel really made this knife shine through. You know, the Strider WP, the Rat RC3, the Benchmade Nimravis, you know, the Swamp Rat Harry Carey, the Swamp Rat Rat Warden. This knife has outshined all those. Strider SA, I've had, I don't even know, lots of fixed blade knives. And this has been my favorite one to date. Just all things considered, it's a great piece of work. The jimping looks great, and it works great too. It's not too aggressive. Anyhow, I'm out of time. Palabra a tu madre. Don't let your meat loaf, boys!